My wife took half of my company in the divorce. Years later, she came back with the perfect plan to take it all. I, 32M, never thought I'd be writing this. But life has a way of throwing curveballs that leave you questioning everything you thought you knew. 5 years ago, I was just another startup founder working endless hours in my garage, surviving on ramen and energy drinks while my wife supported us with her teaching job. We had a modest apartment, shared dreams, and what I thought was an unshakable bond built on years of struggle and mutual support. Today, I'm sitting in my corner office on the 47th floor of our company's global headquarters, staring at an email that's making my blood run cold. The new regional sales director for our European division, the one whose resume looked perfect, whose interviews went flawlessly, is none other than my ex-wife's current husband. Let me back up a bit. 3 years ago, when my company finally took off, everything changed. Our valuation hit 9 figures after a successful Series B funding round. We went from barely making rent to having more money than we knew what to do with. My wife and I bought our dream house, started traveling, and finally felt like we could breathe. But something felt off. She became distant, started spending more time at teacher conferences and professional development seminars. I was too busy scaling the company to see the signs. The late-night texts, the mysterious weekend workshops, the new wardrobe, the gym membership she never used to care about. Classic signs, really, but I was blind to them all. When you're building a company, it's easy to mistake growing apart for giving each other space. Then came that rainy Tuesday evening when I decided to surprise her by coming home early. I had just closed a major deal and wanted to celebrate. Instead, I found her laptop open on the kitchen counter, her email inbox visible. That's when I saw them. Hundreds of emails between her and her mentor from another school district. The emails started professional enough, but quickly evolved into something else entirely. I didn't confront her immediately. Instead, I did something worse. I waited and watched. For 2 weeks, I logged every inconsistency, every lie, every late meeting that actually ended up being dinner dates at upscale restaurants I had never heard of. I hired a private investigator who confirmed what I already knew. She had been seeing this guy, a fellow teacher turned administration climber, for at least 8 months. When I finally confronted her, she didn't even try to deny it. Instead, she turned it around on me. How I was never home, how I had changed, how money had made me cold and distant. She said she had found someone who saw her, who had time for her. The worst part? Maybe she was right about some of it. Success had changed me, but I thought we were changing together. The divorce was brutal. She had the best lawyers money could buy, paid for with my money, of course. In my state, being the wronged party doesn't count for much in divorce court. She walked away with half of everything, including a significant chunk of my company's shares. I was too proud, too angry to fight harder. I just wanted it over. That was 2 years ago. I threw myself into work, expanded the company globally, and tried to forget. Now, here I am, staring at this email about our new European sales director, a man who's technically qualified for the role, but happens to be living in my old house, married to my ex-wife, probably wearing the Rolex I left behind in the divorce. The kicker? He's actually good at his job. Really good. The reference checks were impeccable, his previous sales records are outstanding, and in the 3 video interviews he did with our hiring team, he demonstrated exactly the kind of innovative thinking we need to expand our European market share. I haven't responded to the email yet. The HR team is waiting for my final approval to proceed with the offer. My COO, who doesn't know about the personal connection, has been raving about finding the perfect candidate. They're all waiting for my signature on the final approval. My finger hovers over the keyboard as I try to decide what to do. Denying him the position based on personal history would be unprofessional and potentially illegal. Approving it means accepting that I'll have to see his name in reports, include him in leadership calls, and probably face him in person at our annual Global Leadership Summit next month. The sun is setting over the city skyline, casting long shadows across my office. My phone buzzes, another email from HR asking about the status of the approval. They need an answer by tomorrow morning, European time. The cursor blinks accusingly on my screen, waiting for my decision. I ended up approving his appointment. I know it sounds crazy, but hear me out. After staring at that email for what felt like hours, I realized something. Letting personal history influence a business decision would make me exactly the kind of person my ex-wife accused me of becoming. Besides, our legal team would have a field day if they found out I rejected a qualified candidate because of his personal life. The first month was interesting. I kept our interactions strictly professional, emails, video calls, and project updates. He was surprisingly good at maintaining boundaries too. If he knew about the connection, and let's be honest, he had to, he never let it show. His work was impeccable, his reports thorough, and his team's numbers were already improving. Then came the quarterly reports presentation. He had prepared a comprehensive strategy for expanding our European market share, complete with detailed analysis and innovative approaches I hadn't considered. During the video conference, he presented everything with such confidence and insight that even I had to admit he was perfect for the role. The board members were impressed, and our stock price jumped 3% the next day based on the positive outlook for European expansion. But life has a way of complicating things. Last week, my CFO came to my office with some concerning findings. Someone had been accessing sensitive company financial data, not just the regular reports, but detailed projections, merger plans, and acquisition strategies. The access came from authorized credentials, but the pattern was unusual. Late-night logins, massive data downloads, and specific focus on our most confidential plans. I felt my stomach drop when I saw the user ID. It was his. The timing of the access was strange too. Most of it happened right after his private meetings with our biggest European competitors' representatives, meetings that weren't in his official calendar, but that our security team had flagged. The implications were clear, but the situation was delicate. If he was selling our information to competitors, we needed solid proof before making any moves. If he wasn't, and this was just paranoid pattern-seeking on my part, accusing him would make me look petty and unprofessional. Plus, there was another complicated factor. He still had access to my ex-wife's shares in the company. One wrong move, and this could turn into a legal nightmare. I decided to play it smart. I authorized our IT team to implement new security protocols, requiring additional authentication for sensitive data access. We also started feeding different versions of certain documents to different departments, a classic canary trap. Each version had subtle differences in the projections and plans. If any of this information leaked, we'd know exactly where it came from. Yesterday, my suspicions were confirmed, but not in the way I expected. Our competitor announced a new product launch in Europe, one that seemed eerily similar to our confidential development plans. The details matched the version of the documents that had been accessed through his credentials. It wasn't just similar, it was practically identical. But here's where it gets complicated. The announcement hadn't come from our competitor's European office. It came from a subsidiary company, a company that, after some digging, I discovered was partially owned by my ex-wife through a series of shell corporations. The shares she got in our divorce had been carefully reinvested. The pieces started falling into place. His perfect resume, his outstanding interview performance, the convenient timing of his application to our European division, it had all been carefully orchestrated. They weren't just after company secrets. They were using my own success against me. Again, I'm sitting in my office now, looking at the evidence compiled by our security team. The board meeting is in an hour. I have to present something. Either a strategy to handle this situation or my resignation for letting personal history cloud my judgment and potentially compromise the company. The phone on my desk buzzes. It's a text from an unknown number. We should talk. Coffee at the place across from your office in 30 minutes. It's my ex-wife's number. I deleted it, but I could never forget it. My hands are shaking as I stare at the message. The last time we spoke was through lawyers. Meeting her now, with everything that's happening, it feels like walking into a trap. But maybe that's exactly what I need to do. I went to the coffee shop. Call it curiosity, stupidity, or just the need for closure, but I had to know what she could possibly have to say. I arrived 5 minutes early and chose a table with a clear view of both exits, old habits from my startup days of tense investor meetings. She walked in exactly on time, looking exactly the same, but somehow completely different. Designer clothes, perfect hair, that confident walk she developed after the divorce. She sat down without ordering, which told me this wouldn't be a long conversation. You need to back off, she said. No greeting, no small talk. You're about to make a huge mistake. I just looked at her, waiting. I'd learned during the divorce that silence often reveals more than questions. She sighed, that familiar sound of frustration I used to hear during our late-night arguments. The subsidiary company. The product launch. I know what you think is happening, but you're wrong. He's not stealing your company's information. I am. That caught me off guard. She pulled out her phone and showed me emails, hundreds of them, from various employees in our company, dating back months. People who worked for me, people I trusted, had been feeding her information. Her new husband's credentials were just a convenient scapegoat, a way to direct suspicion toward an obvious target. Why? I asked, even though I already knew the answer. Because you took everything from me first, she said. Those shares you think I got in the divorce. They were worthless by the time the paperwork was final. You made sure of that with your fancy corporate restructuring. The house. Mortgaged to the hilt with business loans I didn't know about. You played the victim, but you planned it all. She wasn't entirely wrong. During the divorce, I had protected my company with every legal tool available. It was business, not personal. At least that's what I told myself. Her new husband's job application had seemed like karmic revenge, but now I realized it was just another move in a game I didn't know we were playing. What do you want? I asked. A real settlement, not the scraps you left me with. And in return, I'll give you the names of everyone in your company who's been helping me, including some people very close to you. I thought about the board meeting waiting for me, about the evidence against her husband that now seemed much less conclusive, about the years we spent building my dream, about the betrayals on both sides. That's when my phone buzzed. A message from my COO, "Don't do anything. We found something. Come back now." I stood up. "You should have come to me directly," I said. "All this, it's not you. At least, it's not the you I knew. The me you knew died in that empty house waiting for you to come home," she replied. "This me? She's better at playing your game." Back at the office, my COO was waiting with our head of IT security. They discovered something I should have seen months ago. The information leaks had started before her husband was even hired. The competitor's subsidiary company had been registered weeks before he applied for the job. Everything, his hiring, the leaked documents, even this morning's coffee meeting, was a carefully orchestrated distraction. The real target wasn't our technology or our market share. It was our upcoming merger with a major Asian tech firm, a deal that would have diluted all existing shares, including the ones she still held through various shell companies. By leaking certain information and hiding other parts, she had effectively sabotaged the merger without anyone realizing she was involved. I spent the next few hours in emergency meetings with our legal team. We had enough evidence to build a solid case against her, but pursuing it would mean exposing significant vulnerabilities in our corporate security. It would also mean admitting to the board that I had let personal history compromise my judgment, even if not in the way they initially suspected. In the end, I made a different call. I reached out to her through our lawyers with a simple proposal, a clean slate, a fair restructuring of her shares, a proper settlement that acknowledged her role in the company's early days, and mutual non-disclosure agreements that would protect both our interests. Her response came within an hour. "Finally playing fair? Took you long enough." That was 2 weeks ago. Her husband resigned from his position citing personal reasons. The merger was quietly restructured to protect all shareholder interests, and the competitor's subsidiary mysteriously delayed their product launch indefinitely. Yesterday, I received a small package at my office. Inside was that Rolex I'd left behind in the divorce, along with a note. Time to move on. For real this time. I put the watch in my desk drawer and started working on a company-wide security overhaul. Sometimes winning isn't about beating the other person. It's about finally ending the game. The divorce papers are in my past now, but they taught me something important. Success means nothing if you lose yourself building it. These days, I leave the office at 6, have dinner with friends, and even started dating again. My company's doing better than ever, maybe because I finally understood that it's not the only thing worth protecting. As for my ex-wife, last I heard, she's using her settlement to fund educational technology startups. Turns out we both learned something about building things instead of breaking them.